b'mayla gavaya ama ve'aleh duchan yesh be'shalish mailes room kol mayla chatzi ama v'shilcha chatzi ama nimtzis ezras hakanim gavaya al ezras Yisrael shtei amis umechza. So again, we went through the Har. Again, the Har Bais is already on a mountain. Then we went through we came from the Har Bais to the Ezras Nashim with 12 steps. And Ezras Nashim, we're getting to the Ezras Yisrael on 15 steps. And then we're continuing on. Oh, now in the Ezras Yisrael, there's a part where the Yidden could go, and then there's a part where only the Kayanim go, where a Yid goes in when he needs to bring a carbon. So in between there and the part that had the higher Kedusha, where the Kayanim would go, so there was a gap of so we have a step going up 1 amma that's higher than the rest of the steps. But then we have 3 steps. Again, each one is a half amma by a half amma. So the Ezras Kayanim is higher than the Ezras Yisrael, 2.5 amas. 1 amma just going up, and then 3 steps, each one is a half amma. Umahalech kol Ezras Kayanim v'amizbeach uveino ulam lamizbeach b'shove v'elam misham la'ulam b'shteimesrei mailes room kol maila chatzi amma v'shilcha chatzi amma v'ulam v'heichal kulam b'shove. And then from the Ezras Kayanim going into the Heichal, going into the Ulam, we have 12 steps. And then going into the Heichal, the whole Heichal is on the same level. Nimtza goiva karka Heichal al karka shar ha-mizrach shel Bais shtayim ve'esrim ames ve'goiva shar ha-Bais esrim amma. Lefichach ha'emet keneged shar ha-mizrach ein reya pesach ha-Heichal. Umpnezeh asu kaisel shal gabi shar ze namuch de sheikayin ha'emet bar ha-mishkar reya pesach ha-Heichal b'shah shemaze midam ha'para nechach ha-Heichal. So interesting. So here the Rambam is telling us the difference in the height from the floor of the Heichal and the floor where we started off outside the Chel. The Rambam mentions here 22 ames. Now the thing is like this. We're going to show now the first picture that we presented here. We're going to see here a picture of the steps. Show it on the screen. We'll show the picture of the steps. And basically what we're going to see is, here we go. Okay, it's upwards, but it's fine. Basically what we see here is that the Har Bais, we see like these sticks going out, those represent the Sharim. Again, really it's supposed to be flat, by mistake it came out upwards, but you could see that as you go up the mountain, there are steps going upward all the way up till the Heichal. Now, what do we see on the other side? We see one side says Har Bais, the other one says Har Mishcha. This is what we just mentioned in this halacha. This picture gives a very good description of what's going on over here. We see on Har Mishcha there's a Kayin standing on like a Mizbeach, and what he's doing is he's burning the Parah Aduma upward, which is really there we go, perfect. So we see the Kayin standing on Har Mishcha. He's bringing the Parah Aduma. Now the Parah Aduma, as we mentioned, was brought outside of the Beis Hamikdash. It wasn't brought on the Mizbeach. It was brought outside of the Beis Hamikdash. And we mentioned in the previous Yurim that they would take the Parah Aduma through the Shar HaMizrach, as you could see it in the picture. And from there, they used to take the Parah all the way to the Har HaMishcha, which there they would burn the red cow, the Parah Aduma. Now, when the Kohen would sprinkle the blood, he had to sprinkle it towards the Heichal. Now, the thing is that the Shar HaMizrach, if it would be the same height as the rest of the Sharim, it would block the view of the Kohen to see all the way through to the Heichal. So therefore, the Mizrach wall was a little bit lower, and then he was able to see, as you see the straight line from the Kohen's eyes, all the way through, hitting the Heichal, so you could see that this Kohen actually could see all the way through the Heichal when he sprinkles the blood of the Parah Aduma. That's what we saw over here. And now we're going to go to the Mishnah, the first Mishnah that we had in the PDF. Till now we spoke about the steps. Now we're going to speak about the height of the Heichel. So this is Perek Dalid Mishnah Vav in Maseches Midas. V'Heichel Meya al Meya al Rum Meya. Now we're going through the measurements of the Heichel. So again, if we're looking at our model, we're talking now about the Heichel itself. We're going to speak about the measurements of the Heichel. So it says like this: Ha'etem sheish ames, v'gavay arbaim amma. There's the base, which is called the item. The item is 6 ames, and then the height of the chamber, the height going into the Heichel, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, is 40 ames high. Now, above the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the first floor, Amma Kiyur, V'amosayim Beis Dilpa, V'ammo Tikra, V'ammo Maziva. It's going through different parts of the ceiling and the floor of the next floor, and that altogether gives us 4 ames. V'gava shel aliyah arbaim amma. Then we have a second floor that's also 40 ames high. V'amakir, v'amosayim beis dilpa, and then also tells us that on top it has a certain design that's 1 amma. Then it has another 2 ames, the beis dilpa, which is another, basically the level of the floor. Beis dilpa amma tikra. Then you have, in other words, you have the ceiling, and then you have the floor of the high of the roof. The amma maziva, the shalish amish maike, the amma kol la'ereg, together with these different designs and the maike, the ceiling of the Beis Hamikdash. As you could see in every design of the Beis Hamikdash, you have these pricks or triangles that you could see sometimes on the top. So actually, the Beis Hamikdash on top has a maike. It has a fence. Like we know, there's a mitzvah to put a fence that people shouldn't fall off a roof. So the Beis Hamikdash also has this fence. This fence is 3 amas high, and the amma kala erev, these pricks that we see on top, were 1 amma. It's called kala erev, to chase away the birds, that they shouldn't make the Beis Hamikdash dirty. Rabbi Yehuda Imer lo yaya kala erev ela min hamida ela arba amis hayamaike. Rabbi Yehuda says the 100 amis of the height of the Heichel is not including the kala erev, these pricks that are on the top of the Beis Hamikdash. Rather, the maike is 4 amis. Okay, so right now we spoke about the height of the Heichel. In the third Beis Hamikdash, it's also described that there will be different steps in different parts of the Heichel. They might be different numbers than the ones that we saw over here. It's described 8 steps, and then 7 steps. But also in the third Beis Hamikdash, we'll be having steps. Now, let's move on to see a few sikhs of the Rebbe on the concept that we're speaking about today. Today, we're talking about the steps going into the Beis Hamikdash. Now, it's very interesting. The Rebbe brings that the Tavnis Bais, the way the Beis Hamikdash is designed, is actually similar to the Mishkan. It represents the design of the Mishkan. The Mishkan, there's the famous part, the Mishkan where the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim was under the curtains, right? We had the Krashim put together and covered by the curtains of the Mishkan. All that would be like the Heichel of the Mishkan. So imagine that the Heichel is equivalent to the Mishkan itself. Now around the Mishkan, there was a Chotzer. In that Chotzer, that's where the Mizbeach HaNechayshis was. The Mizbeach to bring Karbanis was in the Chotzer. And whatever is around the Beis Hamikdash, surrounded by this wall, everything inside is called the Azara. And the Azara is there to represent the Chotzer. That's what the Rambam brings in the beginning of the halachis of the Beis Hamikdash. Now the Rebbe says, L'ch'era, we see something very interesting. We see that the Rambam is saying here that the Beis Hamikdash wasn't flat, it was on different levels. We went through a bunch of halachas in the Rambam mentioning the steps that we're going through in order to go into the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the halachas of the Beis Hamikdash are very important. They're not just for niceness, for the beauty of the Beis Hamikdash, but the halachas are like Shlomo HaMelech brings, David in this Boden Melachim, that everything is al pi Hashem, everything is through Nevuah, and the Beis Hamikdash has to be built with these measurements. So now when the Rambam brings in the halacha about the steps, that means its makir is in halacha. However, the Rambam doesn't say that the mikdash was on different levels in a chiyuv way. Rather, the Rambam says la yahaya b'mishar. It wasn't flat, rather with different levels. So the Rebbe explains, being that the Mishkan was different, and maybe it doesn't say specifically as a chiyuv, and there has to be. We know there has to be steps because that's what's described. But b'poyel mamish, it wasn't in the Mishkan. So the Rambam describes it in this way. So if it's put down in halacha, it has to be that it's done that way. This is part of the nevuah, and this is part of the way that you have to make the Beis Hamikdash. However, the Mishkan, that the Beis Hamikdash is based on the tavnis of the Mishkan, wasn't done that way. So the Rebbe asks why. Again, when the Rambam starts the halachis of the Beis Hamikdash, the Rambam actually starts with history of the Mishkan. That first, the Mishkan, we had the Mishkan in the desert. Then the Rambam speaks about how the Mishkan came to Gilgal, to Naiv, to Givain, to Shilai, and how many years it was in each place, till it came to Yerushalayim, the Beis Ilamim. So the Rambam speaks about the different stages that it had as a Mishkan. Why is it part of Hilchos Beis Habchirah? Why is it part of the halachas of the Beis Hamikdash? Because the Beis Hamikdash is not something else from the gather of the Mishkan. The Beis Hamikdash is a hemshech. It's a continuation of the Mishkan. So therefore, when we start speaking about the halachas of the Beis Hamikdash, we start off speaking about the Mishkan, because the Mishkan was a first stage of the Beis Hamikdash. And as I just mentioned now, the Heichal represents the main part of the Mishkan. The Azara will represent the Chatzer of the Mishkan. But everything is based also on the original tavnis of the Mishkan, and we're comparing that to what we have afterward in the Beis Hamikdash. So if everything is to be compared with the Mishkan, how suddenly do we have an essential part of the Beis Hamikdash called steps? That you have to be going upwards, starting from the mountain, and then the Chel, and then going through the Ezras Nashim, then going up another 15 steps to get to the Ezras Yisrael, going up more steps to go to the Kaya, where the Kayanim stand in the Azara, going up another 12 steps to go up to the Heichal. And it seems like it's halachically, it must be that way. It's part of what the Beis Hamikdash is. Why should it be part of the halacha? If it wasn't in the Mishkan, why suddenly do we have it in the Beis Hamikdash? And to explain this, the Rebbe explains something which is essential in the halachis of Hilchos Beis Habchirah. Now, interesting, even before we continue on, the name that the Rambam gives to the halachis of the Beis Hamikdash, the Rambam calls it Beis Habchirah. I'm sure many participants might have had this question: why are we calling it Beis Habchirah? Beis Habchirah, the translation would be the chosen house. Wouldn't it be more correct maybe to say Beis Hamikdash, right? The normal name that we usually call the Beis Hamikdash. Why are we calling it the Beis Habchirah, the chosen house? And to understand this, there are many psukim in the Torah that speak about Hamakim Asher Yivchar Hashem. The Torah tells us that the Mishkan is going to have many stages. The Mishkan or Mikdash, because v'asuli Mikdash, when we have the mitzvah to make a Mikdash for Hashem, it includes also the Mishkan. According to some days, v'asuli Mikdash is mainly the Mishkan. But when we speak about the mitzvah in general of making a house for Hashem, it includes also the Mishkan. So now what happens now when we move finally to Yerushalayim and we have a Beis Elamim, a house which is forever? As we mentioned before, we can change it. It stays there forever. What happens suddenly that before the Mishkan was able to move from place to place. We had 42 Masais, right? This week is Parashas Matis Masay, and we speak about different Masais that the Yidden had. He had 42 Masais in the desert, and the Mishkan is traveling, and it had 42 places where they put the Mishkan. They came into Eretz Yisrael. It had 4 places before it got to Yerushalayim. Finally, it gets to Yerushalayim. Why is it so important that it stays there? Is it so impossible to move its space? And this is where we focus on what the Psukim say in the Torah. We have many places that it mentions this. Hamakim asher yivchar Hashem. That the Beis HaMikdash will come to the place that Hashem chooses. The Torah already tells us that there will come a time that Hashem will choose a Gashmiyazdika space, that now that will be the eternal space of the Beis HaMikdash. Hamakim asher yivchar Hashem. When we speak about the Beis HaMikdash, so we have a lot of beautiful history in that place. As we'll see maybe in the next shiurim, the place where the Akedah was done, or Noach brought a carbon in the place of the Beis HaMikdash. Many other historic things happened in the place of the Beis HaMikdash. But besides the history that we have in the place of the Beis HaMikdash, we have something also very important, that it's Hamakim asher yivchar Hashem. Melech Malchi Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem chooses a physical space in this world, that this should be the space for his home, for his house, for the Beis HaMikdash. It's not just that we put it anywhere. When it comes to its final point, as the Rambam brings, that the pasuk speaks about El HaMenucha of El HaNachala, that the Beis HaMikdash has a settling point, and then it has an eternal point, that when David HaMelech buys this space of the Beis HaMikdash, when David HaMelech buys this place, so it says, V'zeh Mizbeach La'ela, David HaMelech says, this will be the place of the Mizbeach. And then we say in Tehillim, Zeis Menuchasi Adei Ad, Payeshev Ki B'Sia Zeis Menuchasi Adei Ad. Hashem says, here is where I will be. This will be my place forever. So when Hashem says this will be my place forever, really it was already spoken about before. We already have this mentioned in Torah, that there will come a time that Hashem will choose a place, a physical space. Again, yes, you could go onto Google Maps and Waze and search Hashem's home, this space, earth that Hashem chose. This earth is actually holy. It's a place chosen by Hashem. And this is a chiddush that happens in the Beis HaMikdash. So now, after this Hakdama that we spoke about now, that the Beis HaMikdash is not only holy because it has a structure on it, going to the Mishkan, the space of the Mishkan was only holy, mainly because the Mishkan was placed upon that land, upon that space in the desert. But when we speak about the Beis HaMikdash, it's not only holy because the Beis HaMikdash is placed on top of this plot of land. As we know, today, even though we don't have the structure of the Beis HaMikdash, but still Hashem's covet is there, right? The Shechina is there, and you have to have special covet, as the Rambam brings in Perek Zayin, in Hilchos Bais Habchirah, that there are many halachas which apply to the covet and respect that a person has to give in Rabbi. All these halachas are still there today. Why? The Mishkan, once it was moved from one place to another, we don't have a place in Gilgal or Shiloh or in the desert that people will point out and say, hey, the Mishkan was here, be careful, don't walk there. Once the Mishkan was moved, the Kedusha wasn't there. However, the Beis HaMikdash, even when we don't have the Beis HaMikdash today, the Kedusha of Hamakim Asher Yivchar Hashem, the space, the earth, the ground that Hashem chose is holy, is special. It has Kedusha there. So with that said, we're going to understand why the Beis HaMikdash, it's so essential that it should have steps, stairs, different levels, unlike the Mishkan. When we speak about Hamakim Asher Yivchar Hashem, the place that Hashem will choose, we know that there are many levels of Kedusha. The Rambam in Perek Zayin in Hilchos Bais Habchirah, so the Rambam speaks about different levels of Kedusha that we have in Eretz Yisrael. I'm going to read the beginning. It's in Halach Yud Gimel. I didn't put it into this PDF, but I'll read it from inside of a Rambam. It says, Eser Kedushis in Be'eretz Yisrael. There are 10 Kedushis in Eretz Yisrael. Zu l'mayla mizu. Each Kedusha is higher than the other. And it starts naming. There's Eretz Yisrael, then there's Yerushalayim. And then in Yerushalayim, you have the Harabayis. When you go onto the Harabayis, then you have the Chel. As we mentioned in the previous year, for example, already from the Chel on, Goyim couldn't go in. It already had a higher level of Kedusha. There are certain parts of the Beis HaMikdash that Tmei Meis couldn't go in. Already coming onto the mountain, you couldn't walk there with shoes or with a stick. It's already a higher level of Kedusha. So we're going through many levels of Kedusha when we go into the Beis HaMikdash itself. So you have the Ezras Nashim. When you go from the Ezras Nashim to Ezras Yisrael, the Ezras Yisrael has a higher level of Kedusha, with which Tumis one could or can't go in, being that it's in a higher level of Kedusha. When you go through the Ezras Kohanim, the part where the Mizbeach is, where only the Kohanim could go, is a higher level of Kedusha. In the Heichel itself, it's even a higher level of Kedusha. Only Kohanim could go there, only after they wash their hands and their feet with the Kiyar. Then there's a higher level of Kedusha, as we all know, that we're going more towards the inside. We have the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There are different levels of Kedusha in the Beis HaMikdash. Going back, being that every part of the Beis HaMikdash has a different level of Kedusha. And again, we're going back to the Sikha of the Rebbe, being that every level has a different level of Kedusha, we actually go up steps. Being that the Kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash is a Kedusha Gashmis, it's a Gashmis Dike Kedusha, to the extent that it's a Gashmis Dike house, built with stones. But not only is the Tammuz, not only is the structure of the Beis HaMikdash holy, but as we mentioned, the ground of the Beis HaMikdash is holy. The ground, the floor of the Beis HaMikdash is a holy space. It's a space that Hashem chose. If so, that the Gashmius is holy, and the expression of Kedusha is expressed also in the Gashmius. Therefore, when you go higher to a Ruchnius Dika level, Begashmius, the floor is also going up. Since Beruchnius, the level is going up. Now, sometimes when we speak about Ruchnius doesn't have to mean that the Gashmius is higher, right? There could be something that's on a higher level of Kedusha, but it doesn't mean that it will be bigger or higher, because Ruchnius doesn't always resemble itself in Gashmius. However, the Beis HaMikdash represents a Gili Alikus, that this revelation expresses itself also begashmius. And therefore, in the Beis HaMikdash, when Beruchnius, the level goes up, begashmius, the level also goes up. And let's take this all in mind, right? The mountain of the Beis HaMikdash is a higher level of Kedusha. We're going up a mountain. We're going up a very high level. We're going up a mountain because the mountain is holy. It has a special level of Kedusha. The floor, which is Amakim Hashem Hashem, is not flat. It goes up. And then you're going from the mountain through the Chel, and we know that the Chel is a higher level of Kedusha. There are steps going up. The floor is raised. The floor, the Gashmius of the earth rises. It goes up. It expresses itself also in the Gashmius. You come into the Ezras Nashim, and then going into the Ezras Yisrael, which is a higher level of Kedusha, you go up 15 steps because it's a higher level of Kedusha. Between the Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Kohanim, being that the Ezras Kohanim is a higher level of Kedusha, you were only allowed to go in if you needed to bring the Karban and the different parts that the Bailim needed to participate in the Karban, or the Kohanim going there. It's a higher level of Kedusha. There are steps going up. The Gashmius, the floor of the Beis HaMikdash, goes up a level. From the Ezras Kohanim going into the Heichal is a higher level of Kedusha. Only Rechut Yadayim Raglayim, only someone who washed himself, in a Kayin who washed his hands and feet in the Kir could go in. And it was a higher level of Kedusha. You're going up steps. Being that the Ruchnius goes to a higher level, it expresses itself also in the Gashmius, that the Gashmius, the surface, also elevates itself. Now we go back to the first question. Why is that only in the Beis HaMikdash? Why wasn't it so also in the Mishkan? Shouldn't have it been that way also in the Mishkan? The Mishkan also had different levels of Kedusha. So why wasn't the floor elevated? because the Mishkan was only a temporary place. It wasn't Hamakim Asher Yivchar Hashem. The Kedusha of the Mishkan, till it came to the Beis HaMikdash, the Kedusha that was there was only from the fact because there was a Mishkan placed upon that ground. But once the Mikdash comes to Yerushalayim and it comes to the Har HaMoriah, the Kedusha there is not only because there's a Mikdash placed on top of this ground, but the Kedusha is there also mitzad the ground. And that's why the Kedusha expresses itself also in the gashmis of the floor and the gashmis of the ground, that the surface elevates itself when that Kedusha goes up. With this, we also understand why the Rambam calls the halachas of the Beis HaMikdash Beis Habchirah. The Rambam is focusing on the Beis HaMikdash, and if you want to point out what is the chiddush of the Beis HaMikdash over the Mikdash where it was before the Beis HaMikdash, is because it's Hamakim Asher Yivchar Hashem. Beis Habchirah, it's the chosen place, and that's why it has a special level of Kedusha. This Kedusha expresses itself also in the Gashmius and also today. Speaking about this, maybe many of the participants will have this question. Then what's going on? Why is there no steps between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim? Right? If every level of Kedusha goes up to a higher level, also the Gashmias that the floor rises, so shouldn't there be also a higher level of, there should be also steps going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim? If from the Ezra's Kernim to the Heichel there are 12 steps, I don't know, maybe there should be 50 steps to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. We're going on to a very high level of Kedusha. And the Rebbe explains that when we speak about the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the difference, the richok, the elevation of the Kodesh HaKadoshim on all the other levels, it can't be expressed in a physical elevation. Rather, it's expressed in bittul. And therefore, from the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it's not expressed with steps. There are no steps, because when we're speaking about such a high level, it doesn't come by ascending, by going higher, rather by a total bittul. The teaching to us from the steps is a Yid should constantly be going higher. You should never stay on the same level. You should constantly be going higher and higher to a higher level of Kedusha. And what does it mean that the Gashmius changes also? Sometimes we could ascend spiritually, but sometimes it doesn't penetrate us. It doesn't change us begashmius. What we want to learn from the steps is that when we go higher in Kedusha, we want it also to change us begashmius. It should really have an impact on us, and we should have a real change from a higher level that we get to in Kedusha. However, there's always a level of the Kodesh HaKadoshim that doesn't have an expression of going up, rather a total bittul. Dafke, that would be an expression of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Now, we spoke before also about the height of the Heichel. We have a few minutes left. I'm going to try to use it out to speak about this. When we speak about the height of the Heichel, we mentioned that on the Heichel on top, there was a Maike. Now, interesting, a shul, a Beis Knesset and a Beis Medrash is patur from a Maike, but the Beis HaMikdash is mechuyev in a Maike, according to some opinions. It's a very interesting sikha of the Rebbe. But basically, one of the reasons that the Rebbe brings is, interesting. Okay, Geshmak. Here we have the picture of the different of the height of the Beis HaMikdash. We mentioned it before in the Mishnayos. We mentioned all these different parts, and here we could see also the different levels in the Amis. First we see the 6 Amis item, 40 Amis, the height of the Kiddush and the Kiddush HaKadoshim, all the way till the roof. And as you can see, all the way on the roof, there are 3 Amis, which are a Maike, or according to one opinion, it was 4 Amis. And the Rebbe explains that Dafke, the Beis HaMikdash, is mechuyev in a Maike. Everyone's home needs a Maike, but the Beis HaMikdash especially needs a Maike. But a shul, a Beis Medrash, and a Beis Knesset, and Beis Medrash doesn't need a Maike. And the Rebbe explains this is a very interesting point. The Beis HaMikdash represents Lasis Lo Yisbarich Dira B'Sachteinim. We're making a house for Hashem in this world. And when we influence another Yid, it's helping to make the Dira for Hashem. However, even though we're talking about Kedusha, there might be Gaiva involved. And when we're talking about the heights of the Beis HaMikdash, and especially the roof, so it could be a certain level of Gaiva. And therefore, you have to make a Maike. You have to put a fence around to make sure that that Gaiva is not expressed. When you want to be payal on another Yid, you have to make sure that you're not doing it for your own ego, because then sometimes instead of helping, it could actually interfere and not be helpful. You should make sure that the guide was put aside and you actually speak Dvarim Hayotzim min halev, and Dvarim Hayotzim min halev nichnasim lalev. When it's done with bittul, then you're guaranteed success in the Dira Lo Yisbarich and having an effect on another Yid. Now, mentioning the Gag Beis Hamikdash, I would like to finish off that the Gag Beis Hamikdash has a special place for us today, especially now, going into the times of Geula. And as we know that in Tafshin Nun, Nun Aleph, and Nun Bais, the Rebbe mentioned many times the Yalkut Shem'aini, which spoke about the different wars that were going on, and the Rebbe mentioned that this is a siman, this is a kiyum, it's a fulfillment of the Yehud, of the prophecy that Mashiach is coming. The Rebbe spoke about the Gulf War, as we know that the Rebbe told people to go, even though it was a danger, people thought it was a dangerous time. But the Rebbe said for sure there's nothing to be scared of. Hashem says, Banei al tisyaru. Hashem says, my children, don't fear. All that's going on is from the simanim of the Geula. And I wanted to mention a ha'ara from one of the sichos of the Rebbe, which speak about the Gag Beis Hamikdash. This nevuah, part of what it says, that everything that's going on is from the Siman HaGeula, and Hashem tells us not to fear. Rather, all that's going on is here it's to prophesize and to tell us that Mashiach is coming. So part of the nevuah says, but let me read already the nevuah from inside once we're at it. So the Yalkut Shem'aini says like this: different nations fight with one another. Speaks about different countries, Pardas, Arab, that have a war one with another. The Rebbe explains that Iraq is all in the Shetach of Pardas. There are other countries that are also in this Shetach. And the world is all confused, misrashim misbalim, they don't know what to do, and everyone is scared. And the Yidden also might be scared. And they say, what should we do? And Hashem tells the Yidden, Hashem says, everything that I did for you. Don't be scared. Why are you scared? It's a time of the Geula. And then it explains that this Geula will be the last Geula, that there won't be any Goliaths after this Geula. And then it continues, Shanu Rabbi Seinu, B'shar shemelech HaMashiach bo, when Mashiach comes, Eimid al Gag Beis Hamikdash. Mashiach will stand on the roof of the Beis Hamikdash, V'mashmi'a lem liYisrael v'Eimer Navim Higia Zman Geulaschem, and he will tell the Yidden and Navim, humble ones, Higia Zman Geulaschem. Throughout that year, the Rebbe said over and over again, the Rebbe mentioned this Yalkut Shem'aini, and the fact that now there is a prophecy of Higia Zman Geulaschem. Interesting, the Medrash says that Mashiach is the one that's going to give over this message that Higia Zman Geulaschem. Now I wanted to read one deal. The Rebbe gave this message, the Navi, Hashem's Navi, or the way it's brought down in the Medrash, the Melech HaMashiach is giving this nevuah from New York, from 770. So how does this have to do with the Gag Beis Hamikdash, the roof of the Beis Hamikdash that we spoke about in today's shir? So there's an interesting ha'ara the Rebbe brings in one of the sichos. This is in Parshas Chayisara, Chavez Machash Ben Tafshin Aleph. In one of the artists, the Rebbe says, "Lahari midiuch loshin hamedrash emid al Gag Beis Hamikdash." Mashiach is standing on the roof of the Beis Hamikdash. Why on the roof? He could stand in the Heichal, he could stand in the Azara, he could stand anywhere in the Beis Hamikdash. Why on the roof? So the Rebbe says, "Shegag and Leinis Katru." There's halacha that the roofs of the Beis Hamikdash weren't sanctified. They don't have a kedusha like the kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash. The Yeshleimer shebezem merumos sheachraz anavim yigias man gulavchem ba michutz laaretz shleinis katra b'kedushas Eretz Yisrael. This is a remes that the announcement that Mashiach will give that anavim yigias man gulavchem comes from outside of Eretz Yisrael that doesn't have the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. B'dugmas achiluk shebein Gag HaMikdash la'atech ha'mikdash atzmei, just like the difference of the roof of the Beis Hamikdash and the Mikdash itself. I just want to mention, this is a nevuah. In halacha, when we talk about a Gag, we mean a Gag. We don't mean something that has a kedusha of a Gag. When we speak about halacha, it's exactly as it says. When we speak about nevuah and medrashim, so sometimes it could be a remes, like the Rambam brings in Hilchos Mashiach, that some of the nevuahs we don't really understand exactly what they are. They could be also remazim, and we'll only understand them when Mashiach comes or when they'll be explained. When the Rebbe explains this remes in such a sense, it's kipshute like that. Being that it's a medrash, it's a nevuah, the Rebbe is explaining us the meaning of the nevuah. if I'm not mistaken, one of the sichas the Rebbe mentions, if the Beis Hamikdash is there and Mashiach came, you don't need a achraza anymore. That Higi Azman Gulaschem. When do you need the achraza? Right before it comes, so we could prepare ourselves for the Geula. So here the Rebbe explains what this remez means when we speak about the Gag Beis Hamikdash topic that we spoke about today. So we have the achraza of Higi Azman Gulaschem said by our Melech HaMashiach, by the Rebbe, and even though it was from 770, the reason why it's compared to the Gag Beis Hamikdash is because it doesn't have the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, and the reason for this achraza is obviously that we should prepare ourselves and get ready for the coming of Mashiach. Mentioning this Yalkut Shemaini, I know I passed a few minutes, but I have to mention it. Mentioning this Yalkut Shemaini, the Rebbe mentioned that Iraq is in the Shetach of Pardas. Pardas is an empire. And L'cha'ira, Iran is also part of this regime. And Baruch Hashem, the Nisim that we've seen the past few days and in this whole Tkufa that we are in. So somehow we're sure that it has to do with the coming of the Gula. May we continue seeing these Nisim and the fall of the enemies of Bnei Yisrael, and may we have the full Nitzachim with the Gula Amitis Vashlema now.
Amen. Thank you so much, Rabbi Mayzlesh. You're teaching with so much chayas and so clearly. It really is a real pleasure to learn from you. If you missed a shir, you can watch a replay on Neshei Chabad's YouTube channel. And again, Neshei Chabad is inviting everybody this coming Sunday, El Bavitcher Yeshiva, 8 p.m. We're going to have a Hilchos Bais Habchirah farbringen on the topic of discovering the secrets of Har Maria with Mrs. Malka Tauger. This Sunday at 8 p.m. And learning Hilchos Bais Habchirah, we know, is the call of the hour, and it's a golden opportunity to be part of building the Beis Hamikdash. So please come again and ask your friends to join, and may we merit to meet in the Beis Hamikdash. Mashiach now. Have a good night.